Now, with the geography and the environment all understood, for the ancient history, this is where humans started to settle in Punjab. So the early human civilizations of the land of Punjab made innumerable mud and brick villages built on the ruins of older villages, and they had agricultural implements made of copper and bronze, and they were found on both sides of the river Indus, which proves existence of organized rural communities dating back to 25,000 and 20,000 BC. And these archaeological remains are of ancient Indus Valley civilizations. For example, you may know a civilization called Mohenjo-daro, and it's been unearthed sculptures, pottery, jewellery, fabrics and other relics, showing that the people of the Indus Valley actually attained a high degree of civilization, and they used some form of hieroglyphics, some form of writing was being produced, and they lived in multi-storied houses with marble baths, and their craftsmen made goods which were sold as far away as Mesopotamia. They had evolved some religion around the worship of a mother goddess. So you can see this society has started to develop and become somewhat complex. These cities flourished between 2500 and 1500 BC, but they were ultimately destroyed by the people known as the Aryans, and these guys start to infiltrate into the Sindh and the Punjab about 15 centuries before the birth of Jesus Christ. These Aryans were a tall, fair sort of people, and they drove out the darker skinned inhabitants who occupied most of northern Hindustan. Meanwhile, in the south of India, the Dravidian race dominated, and these were darker skinned with their own language family. So we had a distinct ethnic divide in India at that time. But the newcomers to the north were more pastoral people with a religion and language of their own, which was Indo-Aryan based. Both the language and religion were further developed in their new lands of the Punjab. And it was in the Punjab that Vedic Hinduism was evolved, and many of the great works of Sanskrit literature was actually written. The Aryans were followed by other races, so the Persians came from 521 to 485 BC, then the Greeks 326 BC. Their armies under Alexander the Great crossed the Indus and swept on as far as the river Bias inside the Punjab. And many Indo-Scythian tribes followed, for example the Kshatriya tribe, bringing clan names such as Cambodia, a royal Scythian clan. And these surnames, as well as many others, are even used today among Hindu, Sikh and Muslims with slight variations, and you can find them scattered all over the world nowadays. When the dust raised by the invading armies had settled, the Indian Guptas spread their benevolent rule over the country, and for some centuries they were actually able to block the gaps in the mountains and keep out the foreign invaders. However, by 500 AD the pressure from Central Asia became too great, and once again the gates to Punjab were forced open to let in the Mongoloid Huns. These Huns eventually were subdued and expelled by Vardhana. His son, Harsha, was the last great Indian ruler of Punjab. After Harsha's death in 647 AD, the empire then disintegrated, and the races living across the Suliman and Hindukush mountains began to pour in once more. The new conquerors who came belonged to diverse tribes, but they had one faith. They were Muslim. The golden age of Islam brought Sufism. The early Sufi poets brought the script of Shahmukhi, which had evolved from the Perso-Arabic script. Shahmukhi literally translates to "from the king's mouth" and was used as a conventional writing style across Punjab at that time. So this culture really began to evolve with influence from the west side. And thereafter, the Afghans came like waves of the incoming tide, each wave advancing further and further inland into Punjab. And between the succession of Afghan invasions came the terrible visitation in 1398 of the Mongol, Timur. An invasion for which most of northern India did not recover for many decades. And 100 years later, Babur, who was Timur's descendant, started dreaming of an empire, a Mughal empire in India. This takes us up to the early 14th century and shows how the ethnic pattern of Punjab has really changed over every conquest, and how new races brought new languages, new writing styles, new culture, and new religions.